Hello, fitness business nerds. What's up? Welcome to another episode of the Business for Unicorns podcast. And today I'm very excited because I'm meeting someone for the very first time, along with you meeting him, and it's Mason Bendewald. Welcome, Mason.
Thanks. Happy to be here, Michael.
I'm so excited to meet you. Many of you probably don't know Mason personally, but you probably know a lot of the things he's worked on. Mason is the CEO and founder of Mega Mace Fitness Productions, and he's directed literally hundreds of workout videos. Many of whom you've probably owned. I probably have the DVDs in my house, and I've worked with many of the brands that you've worked with here. The first one, the most famous fitness series of all times, P90X, which I know I still have in my house. I did, and Mason worked on that. You've also worked with big companies like Daily Burn to build out their libraries of content. So I'm just so excited to pick your brain today and learn a little bit about how you approach and think about video production for all of our listeners who I think find themselves doing that more and more every day as business owners. So thanks again for being here, Mason.
Yeah, I'm really happy to be here. Pick away. My brain is wide open for you. And
So
your
maybe we'll
nerd
start with
fan.
we'll start with a little bit of background because as we were talking before we started recording, we realized we're a little bit of kindred spirits because we both came from a performing arts background. Mason, was originally born and raised in New York City, went to performing arts high school, and really got your foothold into entertainment from being an entertainer. And so I would love for you to just kind of chart your course for me from performing arts high school to winding up doing film production. How did that happen?
Yeah, you're jumping right to the crux of it all and how I became very successful in the fitness industry. It's not something I was interested in doing.
Mm-hmm.
I say tongue in cheek when I was pulled into the fitness industry a little bit, I was like, I don't like fitness. I'll play a sport or something, but the idea of standing in front of a camera or standing in front of your television set and working out, to shoot that, when I looked
Mm-hmm.
at it, I was like, man, this is akin to like wedding videos or porn. Like there's not a lot of artistic value to either one. And so to back up to get back to the idea
I
of,
should also say, no offense to any porn directors
right, of
listening.
course not.
Yeah, of course.
Yes, especially if you won any awards. Isn't that funny that there's awards for porn, but not for wedding videos? Why is that?
Yeah, I've seen some epic wedding videos. They got drones and everything these days.
It's gotten pretty high production value. And fitness did not have any of that going on. It was very pastel. It was very robotic. It was very, in essence, just like it didn't matter who was doing it. And certainly nothing to take away from like Jane Fonda and Richard Simmons and some of the big stars of the time, but the production was very mundane, let's just say. So when I got into it, we're going to go back to the start. I was in theater. I was a dancer as well. Realized that was going to be a hard career path, but I had all these other skill sets that most actors and performers didn't, which was producing, directing, stage managing. And so I started producing and doing my own work. And that led me to realize, theater is really hard to make a living in too. And so I went back and got a degree in film. And once I did that, some of the opportunities that came around, one of them was cutting straight to it, was P90X. And at the time, the CEO of Beachbody had said, hey, this is going to be completely stream home workout. And I heard the words, it's going to be completely different, as a cue for me, this young guy, to go, great, then I can do everything different. And in its essence, how I unpack this for people now is I say, I did everything differently, but really I approached it as entertainment. And so I didn't think of it that way, but that's what I wanted to do. I was excited to have the job, but I was excited to make something different, very different from what I had seen. And so I just broke all these rules, which today don't seem like much of a big deal because now we have cameras that are the size of our palm of our hand.
Yep.
And they're incredible cameras. But back then you had to have a very expensive camera, and they were usually put on all these big special pieces of equipment. And I undid a lot of that and made it so that it felt very like you were a part of the workout, and created characters within the workout so that Tony, the star, had something to interact with and play with. He was already an incredible, energetic performer, but to harness that and give him things to do and make it more fun was my goal. And it worked because
Mm.
certainly the marketing was a huge part of why it's successful, but people, like the fact that you still have it. I mean, people watched and
Yeah,
used
I,
that.
I remember. I remember some of the people's names that he was working out
Yeah.
with.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
felt like I
Yeah.
was in the room with them, right? And it had this kind of energy about it that kind of drove me. I was not a big worker outer back then, right?
Worker
Still,
outer.
still not really.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was not. I was a dancer, and I was like, well, I should work on getting stronger.
Uh-huh.
And so, I used to do it in my dorm room. And so and I remember just that it really pulled me in. It felt almost cinematic, like I was really part of the scene.
That's awesome. I mean, that
Yeah.
tickles me to no end to still like to hear a comment like that, because that was, without me like overthinking it, that was the goal. I just wanted people to have fun. And the byproduct, and this is how we'll kind of transition more into your
Hmm.
audience, the byproduct of entertainment and fitness is results, is getting in shape,
Mm.
is getting healthier. Most people approach it as, and forgive me, anybody who's sitting there thinking of this is not an attack on you, but should be a wake up call if it is you. I don't care about fitness. I don't care about your workout program. I don't care about the structure and how many push-ups versus how many pull-ups versus the cardio versus that's your job. That's the part you have to do. What I care about is the experience, because I didn't go to school and study kinesiology. I'm not an athlete. I got to get back to work. So your job is to entertain me through my workout. So I'm excited to come back to work out. The
Hmm.
byproduct is that I'm getting healthier. If you can do that, you'll be turning people away. You can raise your rates. You can do whatever you want. That is truly my approach to fitness.
Yeah. Oh, that makes a lot of sense. I'd love to get your impression on. I've seen the landscape of video and fitness change so much over the last 5 6 years. I'm sure since P90X,
Tremendously. Yeah.
P90X, you've seen it change tremendously. I think COVID was a big part of it. I saw a lot of fitness business owners pivot to video, pivot to online classes during the pandemic, and many in the last 6 months I've seen pivot away because they realized, oh, that's much harder than I thought.
Yeah, sure.
you know, that they jumped in, did their best. Some of them doing really great work, some of them not so much, and they're second guessing. So zooming out, just curious, how have you seen the kind of landscape of fitness and video change just in the last 5 or 6 years? And what are you seeing today?
So, yeah, there's this drastic change. It was already happening prior
Yeah.
to the pandemic, and then it just went, like many businesses did, went into this hyper online model, which forced a lot of people. If they, you couldn't bring people into your gym, as you well know, like you had to get through
Mm.
that. And
We did it at Mark Fisher Fitness, right? We went right online, and we still have hundreds of people doing our online classes now.
see, that's amazing. Now you have a hybrid business where you
Yeah,
probably didn't have anybody online before, right? And
correct.
you're lucky that you and your partner came from a theatrical background. So whether you knew it or not, you brought in, I'm sure, theatrics
Yes.
to everything, as opposed to, oh, we're just going to put a camera on. So I'm going to back
Mm.
up a minute and say, and again, I'm trying to talk to the audience that might not know this already, is you can't take what you do in studio and just go, oh, I'll just turn on a camera. And
Hmm.
if you're thinking to yourself, well, why can't you do that? It's because it's two different products completely. Um, the easiest comparison, which still might be a little hard to understand if you're not an actor, but is live theater versus a movie. They're completely different. This is why sometimes you do not see actors who can do both. In
Hmm.
theater, you have to be louder, bigger. There's an entire live audience, which gives you feedback, and you're playing to even people in the back row. With a movie or a video camera, you can be this close and feel very intimate. And so I don't need to yell. I'm talking my normal voice right now. I got a microphone right next to me. It's just these little translations and understanding how to then convey it. You have to learn these different nuances. So If you go back to the gym situation and somebody's used to teaching group X, they've got a live audience, they've got loud music, they've got the feedback of the energy of the people, and they're yelling out quite often, all right, guys. Well, let's start right there. The first thing you need to do is get more intimate, just like a movie. So you've got a lens, and you got to train yourself to look into the lens like I'm doing. I want to look at myself or look at Michael constantly because that's our natural. You want to look at somebody. Well, on camera, when you're talking to an audience that's remote, you need to talk to the lens, and you need to talk to one person to reach everybody. That alone is a huge note that most people don't understand. In order to reach everyone, you have to talk to one person. And the simplest way to do that is to simply eliminate pronouns like guys and everybody. And think about one person. That's the other trick that I will often teach. It takes a little while to work up to this, but you really imagine that there's one person on the other side of that lens that you're helping, and that helps it become more intimate. I'll stop there for a second and let you ask questions.
I'll just say that I love that the way of thinking about it, because I think our podcast listeners here will often hear us talking about getting really clear about who their client avatar is from a marketing perspective.
There you go. Yes.
Right. And that's exactly the same idea, right? Is that a really good marketing specific message to a specific person who has a specific problem for which you have a specific solution, right? And the same thing is what you're reflecting here, is that when you're making content for them, you want to look at the lens as if you're talking to that person. And by being that specific and that intimate with that one person, other people are attracted. you bring in everyone by talking to that one person. So I think that's beautifully said.
It's so universal. People get hung up, including me, going like, oh, I want to reach everybody. Mm-hmm. Well, in order to reach everybody, you have to break things down and become a little more intimate. Because if it's one person at home working out by themselves, if you say, hey, what's up, everybody, that person doesn't feel seen. They just don't. Mm-hmm. If you're in an arena, it's different because you are part of a group. You feel like you're part of this different event. But if you're at home alone, and there's a lot of different reasons for that, whether it's the pandemic or I just don't feel comfortable in a gym, the quickest way I can feel seen and connected to somebody who's not even in the room with me is to talk to me as if. So as if I'm in the room with you. Excuse me. And that is easy to do by dropping the pronouns and then talking about universal truths. And that's the easiest way I can explain it, which is we all wake up sometimes and don't want to get out of bed. Most of us are not excited about the idea of a workout. Lots of us have children. Lots of us have struggles with, you name it, our taxes, the weather, what's going on in the world politics, whatever it is, they're universal. It doesn't even matter what side of the coin you're on. It's universal that we are feeling something. And if you can put a little of that into your workout for the day, I'm more connected. Because most of us, and in this time of COVID or post-COVID, we're still struggling to build relationships and community, because that's what humans do. That's how we get along. Most of us like group fitness because you're part of a community. But for a million reasons, working remote and doing stuff on camera or at home alone, for time, for money, for convenience, it's a necessity today. So if you're a gym owner and you're looking to move online, taking some of these ideas as you're moving on camera will really be helpful.
Yeah, I want to build on that further, Mason. There's a little bit of a formula you're building here, right? Is that one, you have to speak to a specific person through the lens and know who you're talking to. And by speaking to one, you'll reach all. Yeah, there's this other layer of bringing some kind of universal truths about humanity, about their experience. Empathize, show some compassion for what they got going on in their world. Great. I also know that you have to entertain. Right? It's got to be kind of compelling and entertaining. So while we're speaking indirectly and making them feel something, can you talk a little bit about how to make it feel entertaining?
Yeah.
Hello, nerds. Michael here. I'm interrupting this episode with a very important announcement. I wouldn't interrupt if it wasn't important. And that's because enrollment is now open right now for Unicorn Society for 2023. We only open enrollment twice a year. We often have very few spots. We like to keep the group pretty small. That means if you're interested in joining the group you've likely heard about a million times in this podcast, now is your time to apply. Go to businessofunicorns.com. You'll see a place on our website to learn more about Unicorn Society and start the application process. And here's the thing, is if you apply now before November 6th, you'll save a lot of money with our early bird rate, and so save the money now. In addition to saving the money, we'll also let you start right away. So if you apply before November 6th and you get accepted, we'll let you have the rest of the month of November and December free, so you don't start paying your dues until January. So that's pretty badass. Not only can you save money in an early bird period, but you can also get like maybe a month and a half free. That's pretty amazing. It's a great deal if I say so myself. If you have any questions about Unicorn Society, don't know if it's the right fit for you, talk to us anyway, or email us, michael@businessofunicorns.com, mark@businessofunicorns.com, ben@businessofunicorns.com, pete@businessofunicorns.com. Just email any of us. We're here to talk to you. But mark your calendar. November 6th, early bird ends. So get in there, my friends. Back to the episode.
Yeah, Michael, you're on it. We should take this on the road. It's one of the better interviews I've ever done. To make it entertaining, a lot of it has to do with storytelling. So besides coming, makeup ready, right attitude, knowing the workout, it's to bring a level of energy and excitement to it, but not just that. It's like, how do you do that? You can't just come in and yell. So on camera, what you do in Group X, crank up the Beyonce, slap your hands and say, come on, let's go, everybody.
Yeah.
That does not work on camera in an intimate situation. So storytelling is a huge, this is my favorite. And I know our time is limited here. So let me give your listeners some homework they can do. Cause if they're going,
Great.
I don't get what this guy's talking about.
Sure.
Watch the Food Network.
Mm-hmm.
How many times can you teach somebody how to make breakfast? Maybe twice, maybe 3 times. How many breakfast meals are there? There's eggs, there's bacon, there's potatoes, there's, waffles and pancakes. But if you watch Food Network or any cooking show for that matter, 85% of them are telling stories. They're not cooking. They're telling stories about, my dad grew up on this ranch and they used to go out and get the fresh farm eggs. And I can remember reaching underneath the hen and just feeling the warm egg. And it literally had a different weight to it. And the yolk had a different color. And so when you get your eggs, I want you to get farm fresh eggs because there is a difference to the right. There's a story. And that right already is more interesting. Your food becomes more interesting. Your time watching is more interesting. And before you know it, you've learned how to cook eggs and you might have a couple other things that you've learned. So if you watch the Food Network, you will see how brilliantly that industry has taken the idea of a personality, a chef, weaving in some stories. And that's where they get famous. They don't get famous from the actual dish. They get famous from their personalities. That's a huge.
Yeah. There are a million other pancake recipes. That's not why people are watching that person.
It's how they talk about the fresh cinnamon that their grandma used to take a sprig, like whatever it is. It's the fabric that starts to get you invested in it. And so trainers can do the same thing online. Is think of any story, really. Ideally it has it's either funny, so it has a beginning, middle, and end. And if you're teaching I'm going to also break this down because a lot of people go, well, I don't understand. How can you tell a story and be working out? Watch Food Network. That'll give you ideas. But
exactly.
If you have a 40-minute workout, imagine that your entire story is maybe 6 minutes long. So you're figuring out how to drip 6 minutes into 40. And so that's little bits and pieces. So you might start off at the beginning of your show saying, I'm so glad you're here. I'm Mason, and today's workout's a full body workout. But before I get started, man, did I have a drive into work today. Whew. All right, we'll get to that in a minute. Let's start marching in place. So right away, there's like a little bit of a hook. You're like, wait, what happened on this drive?
Sure.
And then I can slowly drip it in. And ultimately, for me personally, the best stories either have, there's humor involved in them, or there's some morality. And so here's the lesson I learned. Even I was so mad at this guy for cutting me off, and I realized that I don't know what's going on in that guy's world. Me getting angry is about me. I got to take a deep breath. I'm so lucky that I got to be here today working out with you. I hope you go on today with that same kind of gift, as knowing that I really enjoyed this workout with you, and I'll see you tomorrow. So I got a workout in, but now I also got to thank you from the trainer in a real organic messaged way, not just it was great working out with you. I'll see you tomorrow. Like that's so generic. Yeah. It doesn't work. But if I just shared a story where I told you that I felt like I learned something about myself and I was angry, but I knew I shouldn't have been well, that's kind of universal. And then I thank you for being there with me in a heartfelt way. That is what makes me show up tomorrow. That's a big piece of why. And I should say, you can have a great workout. And a lot of trainers are going, that's enough. I know how great my workouts are and people get in shape. Sure. But there's thousands of trainers out there today, and there's a lot of free content. And if you really want to stay and have organic hooks into your audience, you have to share and tell stories that are more humanizing, that are more about your day, more about your life, because people will connect with you and feel like they're part of a community.
That's it. That's exactly it. And as you're saying this, the phrase that kept going through my mind was that connection creates a sense of belonging that turns into customer loyalty, right? I mean, that's 100% in it. And I know it's been true for me. There's some people on my Peloton that I've watched, or even trainers in my own gym who I'll go back to. And in part, it's because I felt like I've gotten to connect with them on some level personally. It gives me a sense of belonging in that experience to them and to others who I also know resonate with the same kinds of messages. And I've had a very similar experiences myself. While I'm not a trainer, I teach a lot of workshops and courses. And years ago, I was, some of the courses or workshop, I would always get like an amazing scores on the content for my workshop when I would get feedback. People thought I was telling them all the right information. This is similar to having a good workout, right? I was doing workshops full of great information. But one person actually gave me the feedback one day, I feel like I would connect more with your material if you told more stories. And this was maybe 8 years ago, 10 years ago. Someone told me this. Yeah, exactly what you're saying. And, and it was hard for me at first to think, okay, well, what stories do I tell? I want to talk about what makes great customer service. So like, I have a million stories about that. I can tell a lot of, the things I'm intellectually passionate about also happen to be things I probably have a lot of stories about. And it helped me get self-reflective about why does this content resonate with me? How have I used it in ways that have been powerful? And most trainers I know have amazing stories about their experience working out, their experience with nutrition, their experience with injury, their experience with trying and failing, their experience with trying new things repeatedly. And so I think they all have more stories than they give themselves credit for, but it takes a little while to get into that rhythm of learning how to tell them, because as you mentioned, it's a performance. It's a performance of both getting the workout in and also inserting those life lessons and those stories along the way. And it just takes practice.
It just takes practice. That's 100% it. And if you're listening and you're saying like, yeah, I want to do this or I need to do it, but you're nervous, start by listening to this podcast again, writing down the things that stick out to you. But think of a story, think of the best parts of it, think of a beginning, middle, and end, and then go tell it to a friend and ask for some critical feedback. And don't give like a lot of explanation, like, well, this is what I'm trying to do. No, just tell the story. And if they say, yeah, that's a pretty good story, but it'd be neat if you added this or add that, take those notes and then just work with that story for a while. And then take that boil it down to 6 minutes, time yourself, and then work on breaking it up into your workout. And once you get that down, you kind of get the rubric, if you will, then you'll start writing down natural ideas of stories like, oh, right, I just had that mixed up coffee order and it set off this chain of events. Oh, that's kind of a cool story because at the end I can explain what I learned or can relate to this. And then to your point, you'll start to get used to it and become more natural because it is a skill that you build. It's not something that you're naturally going to be able to tell a great story in your workout. Like it takes some time to figure out how to do that.
Yeah, well said. I know we're going to be coming against time, but I want to ask one more quick question, and maybe this may be the sexiest. This may not be the sexiest part of this topic to end on, but I feel like my listeners will be mad if I don't ask it. Which is, we've covered a lot of the performance stuff, the stuff that the trainer can do on camera to improve, and I think it's been invaluable. But where I see a lot of trainers and studio owners get hung up is in the technology of it all. In the like, okay, do I have the right camera, the right lighting, the right microphone? All that. And while they're not doing this, on a set, they're doing it in their gyms. Can you just talk a little bit about just some quick tips for how to get that stuff right?
Sure. First of all, don't get overly hung up on it.
Mm-hmm.
There's three main things to any production: camera, lighting, and sound. Your iPhone today, and certainly the newer ones have even more technology. I always get the newest phone. The only reason is because of all the camera technology, and I'm a photographer by nature as well. So I always want to have the best camera, and they're phenomenal. They're really phenomenal compared to what I had to rent a $60,000 camera back when I started my company 27 years ago. And an iPhone is almost a better camera today. Like that's just so you have understanding of what you have in your hand. So using an iPhone to shoot video is perfectly fine. You can use some really basic lights. And if you don't even want to invest in lights, all you have to do is know that you want even soft light on your face. So I've got windows behind me that are closed because otherwise it'd be, the term is called blowing out, and just super bright halo around me. But if I didn't have these little ring lights here set up, I would turn around if I was a performer on camera, and I would put my camera here facing me. I'd open up the windows and I'd have natural light on my face. And that's what you want to look for. And your eye will get used to the idea that, okay, I'm looking for skin tone to look good. So sticking with technical, probably the most important thing though, which is the last thing I'm talking about, and it should be the first, is great audio. Because you've probably heard this, or this is a term that I might have come up with, is I used to tell my trainers on camera, I said, you need to be cueing for the blind or cue in the blind. So if I'm doing yoga, if I'm down doing push-ups, if I'm doing a jump squat and facing, I can't see you in many of those moments. So you have to be articulating clearly enough that if I'm not looking at camera, I understand. So audio is more important in that respect, that you could have the best picture ever, but if the audio is not clear, you're missing it. So you do not want to use okay, it's over here and now I'm recording audio off of the phone. Now, phone's good if it's up to your ear. So you want to get a little external mic. It's called a lavalier. If you want to write this down, or you can put it in your notes for listeners, Rode, RODE, has an incredible microphone today. You get a little adapter for your iPhone, and one side of it plugs in here, and the other side you get a lavalier microphone, or you can even just clip on the actual little receiver end or the microphone end to a collar, and the audio is night and day. So those three things. It goes a long way. And when you're shooting on your phone, you want to shoot on 4K. That's the highest quality. So those three things: an iPhone, like you don't want to be using an iPhone 10. You want to be closer to the current one, which is a 14. You want to shoot on 4K. your lighting, you want to have nice, even light, and you want to have great audio by using a lavalier. There you go.
Yeah, fantastic. It's a great checklist. Thank you for that.
Sure.
Well, I'm sure we could talk for probably another hour because I want to talk more about your performing background and all that, but we'll have to have you back again on another episode, Mason. But thank you for this. Yeah, as we wrap up, how do people learn more about Mega Mace Fitness Productions? How do they find you on the internet? If they want to work with you, how do they do that?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn, or you can go to under my name or the company name Megamace, MEGAMACE.com. I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to help out if I can help you.
Amazing. Awesome. Well, thanks for the great conversation today, Mason, and I hope we can have you back again.
Thank you, Michael. It's my pleasure.